Well, hello, and welcome to episode 237 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. Michaela, we have made it back to October, which means that it is spooky season, which means we are talking about horror films this month, again, just like we do every October. And a couple of seasons ago, we talked about one of the most classic of all of the horror films, Halloween, directed by the legendary John Carpenter. And we thought it was time to kick the old snow off the boots and talk about another John Carpenter classic today, The Thing.
The Thing. Yeah. I I remember there's like multiple versions of The Thing, right? But I remember watching this for the very first time, and it wasn't that long ago, to be honest. It was only like 20 years ago, and this film's been around for a long time. It's almost as old as us. But
Almost.
I remember that there are some super like iconic scenes that now are making movie history. Like people talk about it and everybody kind of knows the lines and knows the things, the scenes from the thing. And it's funny to me how like different reiterations of this same story has come back over and over again because it truly is terrifying. But John Carpenter's version is definitely like no other. And we're going to talk about all the things.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a couple of versions of this because it is a tried and true story. And we're going to talk about that and kind of the birth of this story as we get into it. But before we do that, if you've watched the movie at all, there is one character that stands out above all else, and that is J&B Scotch Whisky. So grab a bottle of that and we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So Brian, we do a lot of really esoteric, strange, complicated cocktails here at Drink the Movies. And the last,
Can
but
confirm.
but
Yes.
but right, I mean, we've done things with like a popcorn, like milk
Hmm.
punch, like we have done the strangest things. However, I feel like it would have been cheating if we had just said, let's open a bottle of J&B and just drink it. Because that's basically what we see. When we look at this film, okay, we see two types of alcohol. There's a Coors Banquet. I don't know if you caught
Yep.
that. And
Hmm.
there's a bottle, there are multiple bottles of J&B just all over the place because I guess that's the only stuff that will keep you warm when it's 40 below in Antarctica or wherever the heck they are. So I thought that was cheating. So what I also wanted to do was I hearken it back to the scene where they're trying to figure out who is the thing, like which one of them is the thing. And so they take their blood and they're like dipping this charged battery thing into these little petri dishes, right, to see
Hmm.
who it is.
Yep.
And um and that sort of was like it looked like a nail, like a rusty nail. So that's what I did is I went and found like a
Wow.
J&B version of the rusty nail. And that's what
Okay.
we did, children. That's that was the epicenter of my creative
That's what we
vision.
did. Yeah. I really liked my rusty nail, and now I'm rethinking it. Now that I know that's where it's coming from, some potential alien blood coming everyone's way. Yeah, absolutely. So the rusty nail it is a classic two ingredient cocktail. It couldn't be simpler to make if you have the ingredients that you need to make it. This cocktail it hails all the way back to I think people were talking about making it like as like far back as like into the 30s almost. Definitely like a post prohibition thing. And J&B Scotch here in the United States at least became really big and really popular post prohibition in the United States because that was one of the first scotches that was distributed back to the US after that period ended. So making this, like I said, is very simple. It's basically two parts of your blended scotch. We're going to be using
Mm.
J&B here for ours, but you could use kind of any blended scotch that you want to use. You could use a single malt too, I guess. It's going to get you in the same ballpark, but 1.5 ounces of that, and then 3/4 of an ounce of a Scotch liqueur, the famous one being Drambuie. So go ahead and put that into a glass with a big ice cube. Give it a stir so it chills it just a touch, gets a little bit of that ice melt. Sip and enjoy. Michaela, Rusty Nail, has this been part of your repertoire before? Is this your first true Rusty Nail you've ever had? We actually had a frozen Rusty Nail slushy at Epcot a few years back when we were there for their art festival. But what about a Rusty Nail? Is that something you've enjoyed before? Or is
No,
this new to you? New to you?
this
Okay.
was new. This was new to me. I don't normally have a lot of scotch on hand, blended or otherwise. And so this very day, I went to go and taste this. And apparently, my liquor store only has J&B in the gallons.
Mm,
bottles. So I have a
okay.
whole ton now. I'm gonna be making rusty
All right.
nails for weeks. Um, Now it's interesting because Drambuie isn't the only whiskey-based liqueur. It is the most popular. And I found this to be really good, a good version of it, just because it's got a little like a hint of like a honeyness and like
Hmm.
kind of a caramel mouthfeel, much more kind of than thicker than the actual liquor, right? So then the J&B. And so I really liked this because it evened things out a little bit. Scotch tends to be very, I'm gonna say peaty for me. I don't know if that's the right term. It's very strong. And so this like that really helped even it out just a little bit. So it was something that I really liked. I do think that I prefer it to be real, real cold. And so I liked it with a lot more ice melt in it so that it was like frozen, like
Hmm.
real, real, real cold. Versus if you're probably a true connoisseur, you only want it to be just a touch of ice melt because you really want to get all the naughtiness of the flavor just hitting you right in the face, and that was a bit much for me. So I preferred it as the more I drank and the more ice melt I got, the more I liked it.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely good to get a little bit of ice melt in there. I believe that most scotches are distilled with the idea in mind that you are going to dilute it out with a little bit of water. Now, J&B is a blended scotch. I don't believe any of the scotches are coming from the Islay region specifically,
Mm,
so it shouldn't
right.
be that peaty. If you are mixing this up with, say, a Johnny Walker, that is going to have some Islay scotch in there. It's going to have a lot more of that peat smoke
Mm,
that kind of tastes
mm.
like a damp campfire in your mouth.
Yes.
If you're into that for sure. But this is fine. J&B is a really inexpensive scotch. It's perfect for stuff like this. Would I just have a glass of J&B? Would I drink a whole bottle of J&B if I was at that Antarctic station? I absolutely would, 100%. But in my day to day, probably not. But I am going to make up some more rusty nails because rusty nail is delicious. Drambuie, it gets the short end of the stick. It has a weird name. You only ever see like old people buying it, so you're like, what is the deal with Drambuie? But yeah, I mean, it's just like this liqueur that has like a bunch of like honey and heather and like
Mm,
deliciousness to it. If you can't
yeah.
find that, or you might have a bottle of like Irish Mist, which is similar in construction. There with just
Hmm.
an Irish whiskey, you could use that in place of this. But the Drambuie also pretty inexpensive. So yeah, you got a couple of bottles of these. You have enough to make enough rusty nails to survive the thing. At least a couple of times for sure. So, yeah. Any other thoughts here on the rusty nail, or should we go ahead and just check in with our helicopter pilot down in
I,
Antarctica?
I think we should do that for sure. Let's do a couple more of these for the road because we're going to need them. Because
We're
holy moly, some of the stuff that comes out of that
I think
guy's
the
chest is horrible.
I think the Norwegians could have used a rusty nail. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, The Thing.
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation.
Spoiler warning for John Carpenter's The Thing. If you've not yet seen it, there's actually a lot that happens, and I don't want to spoil it for you because the ending is pretty cool. So do yourself a favor. Go get yourself a rusty nail. Maybe don't get a whole gallon of J&B blended scotch if you've not had it before, but go make it because a rusty nail's amazing. Go watch the film and then come back and let us chat about it.
Yeah, on a quick aside, you can usually find J&B in like a small like half size bottle, even at my liquor store. But go to
Yeah,
Michaela
apparently they took one look at
if you need
me and they
some.
were like, "It's the bottom shelf, and we only
The
have the
big
big
one,
one."
the
I
big
was
one.
like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
there you go.
okay, thanks. What
There you
do I
go.
look like?"
Well,
Don't
grab
answer
that,
that. Don't answer
grab
that, Brian.
that. You look like you need some J&B. You look like R.J. MacReady. This was released in 1982. It was directed by John Carpenter, of course, and it stars Kurt Russell as R.J. MacReady, the helicopter pilot, and our chief mechanic, Childs, is played by Keith David. And there's a specific reason we're mentioning those, beyond the fact that they're Kurt Russell and Keith David. There are some other scientist types down here at our Antarctica the Scientific Research Center, I guess is what we're
Mm.
assuming this to be, and we will talk about them as we kind of make our way through the story here a little bit. So you mentioned at the top that there were, several versions of this. This was based on a book, a short story from 1938. It's called "Who Goes There" by John W. Campbell Jr. And then I believe there was a version kind of made for this in like the 50s.
Mhm.
Some kind of thing, some schlocky sci-fi kind of thing before John Carpenter takes over and does his version here in 1982, which is of course the penultimate version that we think of now. But we didn't think of that at the time that it came out because apparently people didn't really like this in 1982 because it was very dark and bleak, and apparently it was a little too gross in 1982. And 2025, still pretty gross.
Still pretty gross. I gotta say, like the the gore effects of this film had to have been a cornerstone for so many things that happened later, right? Like, I think if you think about like Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, apparently when we like totally jump the shark off of kind of this alien story, right? This
Mhm.
alien gore effects. I mean, it's like I don't know how they did it, but they used all these same similar materials to create these effects of like flesh and blood and guts and gore. And especially with the effects of burning, because we see a lot of things, a lot of alien things getting burnt in this film, and kind of seeing how that has recreated itself in other movies. Definitely to me harkens this is like a cornerstone of the beginning of some of those effects. However, yeah, you would never know it because the thing didn't get, it was not panned, but it was not incredibly well loved when it first came out. But it's funny now because a lot of horror films say this is in their top 10 of like or all horror movies of all time just because of the
Mhm.
crazy gross effects that are
Yeah.
indeed like shocking. Like even today, 40 some odd years later, it's like, oh my God, how did they turn that person's head into a spider? That's gross.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean this is just coming on the heels of Alien, a film that we've talked about as well, which really, kind of build out this atmosphere
Mm.
of horror, of thrills and chills, and the thing does that as well. And yeah, definitely didn't get his due in the day, but is commonly referred to as one of the greatest sci-fi stories, one of the greatest kind of horror stories, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it was really good to get a chance to go back and watch it. And since we're talking about kind of those visual effects, let's go ahead and talk about those just a little bit. So apparently, the film was made on a budget of about $15 million. About $1.5 million of that went to the special effects to get these practical effects, and they were handled by a gentleman by the name of Rob Bottin. Rob Bottin has done special effects for a long time. Started doing like Star Wars. I think he was like 18 years old when he started working on the original Star Wars, but then he went on to do a bunch of stuff with John Carpenter here, with David Fincher, with Paul Verhoeven. He did
Mm.
the special effects for stuff like The Fog, Legend, Total Recall, RoboCop, like all those things that you think of when you
Mhm.
think of like really, kind of cutting edge, I guess, special effects, visual effects through
Sure.
the 80s, were attributed back to Rob Bottin. And that definitely is the case here because you get a lot of kind of like body horror type of things as this alien is, taking over and trying to, I guess, replicate the people here on this Antarctic scientific research station. So let's talk about the movie, Michaela. I love it. It opens. There's like the cheesiest looking little like spaceship saucer flying through space, and then it comes up. It's a thing, all that jazz. And then you see the frozen Arctic tundra for as far as the eye can see. There is a cute little dog there. There is a helicopter there. This guy is screaming at this dog in Norwegian, shooting at the dog, and you're like, why are you shooting at that dog? That dog looks nice and friendly. I want to give it a pet. It looks like it's probably a good boy. Leave that dog alone. And the dog eventually makes it back to the camp of the American scientists that are there. R.J. MacReady, the helicopter pilots, Childs, the chief mechanic, and everyone else is there, and they're kind of watching this unfold. They're watching this maniac in a helicopter shooting at this dog. Bad shots, by the way, Norwegians. You can't even hit this
Yeah.
dog. But he gets there, and the dog has made it to safety. That's great, right? You feel bad for the dog.
Mm.
I feel bad for the dog.
Oh yeah. At the beginning, you're like, who are these crazy people speaking in whatever language? You'd have no idea what they are at first, right? And they're screaming at it, and they finally end up what the guy who's got the machine gun who's screaming at them in Swedish or whatever. He ends up shooting one of the guys
Norwegian.
in Norwegian. Sorry, he ends up shooting one of the guys in the leg. So they're like, dude, you can't do that. So they shoot him, and he ends up dying. Okay, and so we never know what he's saying until we find out later what he was saying. Um,
Yeah.
right. And so they're like, well, that sucks. We got to put this guy away. And the dog has been hanging around camp. And then they're, for a while. And then they say, well, why don't we go take the dog in with the other sled dogs? And then we see what happens. And it's real gross.
No, I wanna talk about this dog a little bit more. Shout out to Gary, the station commander. He's played by Don Moffat. He just shoots like out the window with his little pistol, shoots the Norwegian guy like right through the eyeball. The Norwegian guy
Yep.
can't hit the broadside of a barn, but here we are. So the dog is there, right? And the dog is just like hanging out at camp. He looks all sad. He's like laying underneath of the pool table. He looks sad. You're like, man,
Hmm.
that poor dog, that's so sad. And then they're kind of, the rest of the team is milling about, and then the dog kind of pushes the door open and is walking down the hall, and you're like, that dog is suspect. That is exactly why they're shooting at this dog. That dog is so sketch. I don't trust him one little bit. And then yeah, they've put him in the kennel with the rest of the sled dogs. And about that time, Rob Botton's creature effects come into play.
Right. Now, I just want to say this opening scene. So they go in and they see that like there's couple of dogs that are dead, and then this dog like I don't. It looks like a dog, and then its face literally falls away, and there's just this like open gaping mouth with like a tongue thing that comes out like a spire,
It looks like the
and
thing from Stranger Things.
it
Thanks, the
does.
thing.
Thanks, the thing. I mean, it's crazily scary and gross, and you don't really know what's going on. And then all of these like legs start coming out of the
Yeah.
beings. And so
Little
it
like
doesn't
crab
know.
legs.
Yeah, like they look like crab legs, and then there's these weird like it would be spider legs, but they were straight. It's just very gross. And so they, they realize that all the dogs are dying. They're not all dead yet, but they're all getting like I don't the word would be assimilated later. We would realize
Mm-hmm.
what this thing is trying to do. And so of course Blair is my favorite, my grandpa, Wilford Brimley, all right, in his one of his best performances ever. I didn't even recognize it was him other than his voice because he wasn't wearing a mustache.
No,
But
he's very
he's like the
unrecognizable. Yeah, for sure.
right. And yeah, I mean he doesn't look he's not
Kurt
wearing a
Russell looks
cowboy
exactly
hat.
the same from
Right.
1982 to 2025,
Yeah.
but everyone else
I
has changed. Yeah.
just want to point out I don't know what rock he sold his soul to, but I'm excited for him because he looks exactly the same. But Blair is the senior biologist, and he's like, hey, we should check this out. He's like doing all this work on these dogs that are now like they burned them to get them to die. And he's like looking at their endoskeleton underneath, and they're like, well, they have all the regular organs, but it doesn't look like a dog yet. And so the best they can come up with is that whatever this thing is it's like assimilating and kind of metamorphosizing whatever it kills so that it can look like them.
Mhm.
And so that would make sense, right? They're like, oh, that's why the dog looked like a dog. It wasn't really a dog. Oh, that's why they were going to kill him. That poor. Now we feel really bad for all the Norwegians, and we wonder what
Yeah.
happened to their site, right? Um, and
We
then we
do.
also harken back to the fact that this dog must have, or this thing, this alien thing, ran for miles and miles and miles and miles, and so it is really trying to stay alive. Um,
Is doing its
and
best
so
to stay alive. Yeah,
right,
and yeah, so with this knowledge in mind, right? I like they go over to the Norwegians camp, right? I forget exactly how long he said it was. It was like 10 miles away or something like that. I don't remember. But of course you get MacReady there is gonna take the helicopter up, and I think he goes with I don't even remember who he goes with for sure. Someone he goes with someone to the
yeah.
Norwegian camp, and the Norwegian camp's awesome, right? Because it's like half like burnt down kind of, it's like dilapidated, and they see like get this crazy like atmospheric thing because it looks more or less like their station that they're in, right? But the lights are all out, it's all like the walls have been like knocked in, so there's like snow and ice on everything like that, and
Mm,
they come across this weird looking like trough kind of thing, this like ice like rectangle that they find, and
Right.
it's just empty, right? And they're looking into it. They're like, what the heck is this? And then as they're walking out, of course they've seen the spaceship, from up high in the helicopter, right? It's half frozen in snow. But as they're leaving to come out of the Norwegians' camp, they see this same exact size rectangle that they have cut out of the ground. And the wheels start turning, and they're like, whatever they dug up out of the ground, that's probably what was inside of that dog.
Right. And this is bad because it can just be free frozen, right? And that comes into play later, right? Where they're like, well, okay, well, what are we gonna do? And so there's a whole bunch of people and they don't go missing. That's the thing, is that they can't really go missing, where they find like pieces of torn clothing and they're trying to figure out like who it could be, because now, I mean, it just takes a little bit of time. And we see it with one of the guys where he, it looks like him, and then he kind of turns and his hands haven't gotten to be formed into human hands yet, so they're these weird like crab claws with extra appendages, right? And so that is where things get really scary, because no one trusts anybody anymore, because if you've been by yourself for like 5 minutes, you could become the thing, right? And the
Mhm.
fire can kill the thing. um but if it kind of detaches and grows, it's like a virus almost, where like there could be multiple things. um and I love how, if you ever are going to go and like look at Wikipedia or look at any of the um anything written about this, they call them like the dog thing or the Blair thing or the the person thing, because that's the only way that they can differentiate like who it is and what it is.
Mhm.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, one of the exceptional things about this movie, looking back on it through the lens of time here, is how much it really plays up on like the psychology of the mistrust, of the isolationism, of all of that stuff. We talked about Alien, and that doesn't really come into play in Alien like it does here, because
Mm.
literally this entity could be, any one of these people. And I really love, the character of Blair here, played by Wilford Brimley, who, has done the autopsies on this, who realizes kind of what this is and, what it's capable of doing, and is, running some computer simulations with like, it's like the worst computer simulation of all time, but he's running it and he's like, oh, this thing will take over the camp in like 2 days, and then it'll take over the whole world in like like a week or something, or something like that. So like he starts going nuts, right? He starts destroying things, and the rest of the camp think that he's gone mad because he's been abducted by the thing, and certainly that could be the case because that does happen
Right.
later in the film. Uh, but you really don't know, because you never get the answer to, was he like, you know, wrecking all of this stuff, tearing up the helicopter, destroying all these computers. Was he doing that because he had been taken over by the thing, or just because he was scared of the thing? And no one else knows either. And that is terrifying. So when they lock him up in the shed, right, to kind of isolate him from everyone else, that's really when the psychology aspect of this film starts coming into play, where everyone is kind of fair game to be
Yeah.
under the watchful eye of, kind of MacReady, I guess, who is, the de facto leader of this team, but really everyone.
Right. Oh, I love when they go out. They're outside talking about things and they're trying to find somebody, and they find like this dead corpse, and they can't decide, like looking at the evidence, if the guy set himself on fire because he was just so scared of being assimilated by the thing and turning
Mhm.
into the thing, or if there was a struggle and he accidentally was killed by the thing, or what, right? And there's a lot of unanswered questions like that that we just don't know, right? They MacReady has this shack that is away from where everybody else is. And I love the scene where he is asking someone to go with him to go check it out because he left the light off, but when they go see, the light is on, so someone is there. Um, and people are so afraid of each other that like MacReady's partner, Knowles, abandons him like outside in 40 below, because he's like, I found torn clothing with his name on it. That means he's been assimilated and he is the enemy now, and I have to run away. And MacReady finally walks in and he's got dynamite and he's like, everybody stay in. We're gonna figure this out. No one's leaving my sight. I'm gonna shoot you and kill you all. And that's the thing that I thought that's good. I thought was much more skillful in the horror story aspect of this because I never really gave it much credit before watching it this time in that psychological aspect that you were talking about, where
Hmm.
it's about this thing that can kill you, and that's really scary. But also, like, we never do find out if Blair was nuts or if he was really scared or if he had been, if he had been one of the first to be assimilated and he's been watching this whole thing occur. From the, we don't really know. And what was scarier, the thing that could kill you or the human that could
Hmm.
maybe kill you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get a couple of more transformations, right? Because the thing is, capable of basically taking over any of these people. But you also get the murder of Clark, who is the sled dog handler, played by Richard Mazer. And it's because, he comes at MacReady. And again, you don't know, was he taken by the thing, or was it just the paranoia of him trying to get MacReady before MacReady got everyone else because he thought, that he was. So it's the psychological aspect of it is really, really brilliant. And then you get to the scene where you mentioned, which apparently is where a rusty nail cocktail comes from. Gross. But you cut your thumb in the grossest way possible. Don't do that.
Don't
They
do
had like
that.
they had like a whole like surgery thing. Just take a little
Yeah.
bit of blood. Come on, what are you doing? What are you doing? But anyway, you slice off your whole thumb basically. Get a little petri dish full of blood, and then you use your blowtorch, your government issued flamethrower that you have at your Antarctic refuge there.
Sure,
You just
sure.
heat up some coil there, and you stick it in there and see if the blood freaks out or not, right? So he's going through and kind of testing everyone. Of course, they think that the station commander Gary was, one of these things. They thought that he had, kind of sabotaged the
Mm.
blood stores that they had there, but turns out he's fine. But you know who is not fine? That is Palmer, the assistant mechanic. You get the Palmer thing, right? As he starts to transform. His is really super gross because he gets like this like crazy like long neck and his head is like up by the ceiling and it's all deformed looking. I mean, really, they're all pretty gross to be honest. But his is especially unsettling, I think, because it's the most brightly lit of all of these things.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. You're talking about the one where the head kind of pops off too?
Yeah.
Because there's that one's the worst for me. Because they think that one guy's having a heart attack and turns out he's just becoming more of it. I don't know. But his head pops off and it grows legs. And they're not even paying attention anymore because they're incinerating the big body, right? And so it's like
Mhm.
scurrying away as if it's a spider. And my favorite line is when they're like, "You gotta be effing kidding me." They're like, "Oh my God, we are so dead." And it's like right after that where MacReady is like talking to the radio and he's like, "We're all gonna die here, and no one trusts anybody." And yeah, hopefully if you read this, y'all survived because we're all gonna die. Like this thing grows legs right in front of us. Like, oh my God, it's so gross.
It was pretty gross. It is pretty terrifying. And about that time, they decide they need to go find Blair, right? So they can do the blood test on him. But they get out to the little shack, and Blair's gone. Right? They see that he's pried up some of the floorboards there, and he's made an escape. There's like an underground like tunnel system kind of thing, which is where like the generator is for the whole station, and the generator has been disassembled, sabotaged again. That's not great. Now the camp is going to be going into deep freeze. Don't be in Antarctica without a way to heat your building. That's a bad idea. And that is exactly where they find themselves because they've decided that the thing is running out of people to go live in, so it's just going to go back to sleep, right? And just wait another 100,000 years till the next time it gets
Yeah.
a chance to break out, which is bad because you've only got three of these people left now, right? Blair's dead. I think they find Blair dead or something like that. But you have Childs, you have MacReady, and you also have I think Gary, right, is still around, and they're going. They decide that what are you going to do? You're at the end of your rope. And MacReady basically laid it all out there on the radio for everyone. He's like, listen, he's like, this is bad. None of us are going to survive. So hopefully you all survive. End of story. Uh, you know, so they decide they're going to just blow up the camp, right? That way they can kill the thing. They will kill themselves. They will kill everything in the name of saving humanity. A pretty noble thing to do. right? Honestly, and
Sure, sure.
at this point, you think that the thing is probably not in any of these three people because you would think that they might not go along with that plan, so to speak, right? Gary ends up meeting his untimely fate, but they do end up getting this place wired to blow, which is exactly what it's going to do, and leaves our two heroes here out in the cold to share a bottle of J&B Scotch, MacReady and Childs.
MacReady and Childs. And there is this whole thing. I don't know if you saw this in any of your research when you were looking things up and learning about this film, but there was this whole thing where there's a scene. The final scene is Childs returns. He's like, "Hey, I got lost. I was, chasing Blair, and I got lost. I'm okay. Are you okay?" And MacReady's like, "Sure, I'm okay. Here, have a bottle of J&B." Right now,
Hmm.
when they were gonna blow up this space, they had a bunch of these bottles that they had made into like these Molotov cocktail kind of things.
Yep.
I think that's what they're called, right? Where you throw it and it
Hmm.
explodes. Now, the
Yep.
special effects of making this thing blow up in the middle of the snow and ice, I thought was actually pretty cool. I thought that
Pretty
was
cool.
neat.
Yeah.
But there's this whole thing of like, did MacReady was this a test for Childs? Um, in would he recoil at the taste of what was in the J&B bottle? Because while it was a bottle of scotch on the outside, it could have been a Molotov cocktail on the inside, which is not just going to be
Mm.
scotch. And so, like, there is this whole like you got to go look it up. It's everywhere, all over Reddit, where it was like there are
Okay.
people who are
Okay.
surmising, and then they're following all the bottles of J&B that turned into Molotov cocktails, and like
Right.
trying to figure out and account for everyone because they're sitting there in front of this kind of fire, and they're both gonna starve to death. They're gonna freeze to death right there, right?
Yep. Hmm.
And so they both kind of are looking at each other. MacReady hands Childs over this bottle. He drinks it, and then they both kind of smile at each other because either way, the thing has probably won because it's either in one of them
Yep.
and it's just gonna go to sleep, or they're dead. So, I mean,
Or
it's
they're dead.
really like that, or they're gonna
Yep.
die, right? Like either way, they're meeting their end. Um, and so you don't really know what happens at the end. I mean, it can go either way. And I think if you watch it multiple times, you can kind of decide what you think the fate of these of the world is going to be. Is the thing inside one of them?
Yeah. Well,
Or
and because it wouldn't be able to get away because Blair had sabotaged the helicopter, right? So
right?
stuck there. The J&B Scotch angle is kind of an interesting one. I'm inclined to think that if MacReady was not, in fact, the thing at the end of the film, that he wouldn't pass up an opportunity to have a last swig of actual real scotch. That's my take on that. There, you just experienced like the worst time of your not very long life you have left to live. So I think that's interesting. Um, but the angle of it that I think is interesting is that MacReady basically decides to burn down the station, right? The generator's done, burn down the station, and I'm like, why would you do that? Because now this thing's just going to be able to get out there and hibernate again easier. What's the deal with that? This place is
Mm,
gone, so I don't know. And yeah, I mean you don't know that are MacReady and Childs fine? Are they both not fine? Are they sitting there enjoying that drink because they know that they're both the thing now? It's replicated in both of them, and
right. Like
they can just go to sleep in the snow and wake up again in another 100,000 years, which is pretty short for an alien, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to chew on in the
yeah,
thing,
there
especially
really
if you're
is.
a sled dog, I guess.
Okay, right. Well, and also like even if it's at its most basic where they've managed to kill the thing or it is definitely it's gone. It's at least hibernated. It's not going to bother them anymore. And they're just like, it's so futile for us and stupid for us to like not trust each other because we're going to be dead in like an hour. So we might as well just sit here and drink and just, you know, let go and let go of the distrust, right? There was
Hmm.
so much of this like what could be what is there's so many more musings that happen and I think that happens the more you watch it, especially with like all of the details around certain pieces of where who went because you're keeping track of like six or seven of these folks and trying to understand where they all went and who what their motivations would be, and so
Hmm.
at the end you're just as exhausted I feel like as Childs and MacReady, and you're like, I don't even know if I care anymore. Like,
Yeah.
but it is interesting. Like, I don't know. I think that that piece, that humanistic kind of distrustful piece, is almost scarier than the thing itself. Although the thing is pretty scary, because it either way, it's kind of one. It's one for them, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no real escaping it at this point, for sure. Yeah, the thing is great, and I certainly can understand why it might not have received such a warm welcome in 1982. It is pretty dark. It's fairly disturbing, but I mean, it's very bleak, right? We just kind of walked through the possibilities of outcomes for this thing, and none of them are happy. So I could certainly understand that, and I think kind of it's it was bold in that sense of telling that story, and the way that it's shot, it looks absolutely great. The use of like
Oh yeah.
lighting and all that stuff is just absolutely fantastic here. And John Carpenter was doing his thing right in 1982 there as well. So, Michaela, the thing, it's a movie we've talked about, kind of off and on, in the background of being something that we'd wanted to cover. Was the thing something that you have seen before? Are you just watching it now, like with fresh eyes? Did you watch it like as as a too young, impressionable Michaela? What's your thing story, I guess?
What's my thing story? I watched this
Are
for the
you
first
the
time
thing?
probably. I'm not the thing. I am not the
Okay.
thing.
Is that why you didn't
Uh,
like the Rusty Nail?
that's right. That's why. No, I just, oof. Too much Durham Bowie. Too little sense. I don't know. I watched this about 20 years ago because I kept hearing, I mean, I kept seeing that this would make it into like the top 20 scariest movies of all time, like horror movies, even though it's really more of a science fiction. But so was Alien. Like Alien was thought of as a science fiction movie, but then
Hmm.
there's all this idea of is it a horror film, the first one, not any of the subsequent ones. And I
Right.
feel like I watched this and I was just in shock by the end because it has a lot of action components. It's definitely got sci-fi in it. It's very gory. But really the feelings of distrust and the feelings around like the human experience of this and which is worse, is it being assimilated by this thing or being sabotaged because people are so scared they're not thinking clearly or about other people at all, that sort of thing. I don't know. I really liked this, but I hadn't watched it in a long time, so it was really good to revisit.
Hmm.
It's usually not something that I would, it's definitely a film that I would do and I would watch in the fall or the winter because it's very cold and dark and it's definitely that would definitely tend to like lend itself better to the environment in which you're watching it. But no, I hadn't seen it in a really long time, and I'm sorry that I hadn't because it's very, very good. It's very well done, even though it's real old. And some of the the side the special effects are still they're very daunting and just as gross. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it still looks absolutely gorgeous. The creature effects are, you spend a $1.5 million on creature effects. It shows here, in this because it is highly disturbing, and very graphic, but like it never felt like gory to me or
Mm.
kind of putting that foot out. I really like the thing. I probably watched it, yeah, probably like in high school, like a
Mm.
lot of people do when they're kind of first starting to watch horror movies. It'll be on at a party or some trick or treat gathering or something like that. So probably would have seen it the first time then. And then the thing is something I watch every couple of years. It's definitely not on my annual staple, but it is kind of on the rotation of things that I'll watch, periodically every couple of Octobers. I'll get a watch in of the thing because it's brilliant. I love it. I might like it more than Halloween. I don't know. I'd have to think about that, but the thing is really good. You mentioned kind of Alien there when talking about it as, kind of the sci-fi story, which got me thinking, Alien is this sci-fi movie that is really a horror movie. And the thing is a
Hmm.
horror movie that's really a sci-fi movie. So they're kind of
Yeah.
like flip sides of the coin there and very similar. Like I said, and kind of the way the atmosphere is telling, part of the story, the level of, distrust and kind of misinformation that you're getting from the characters, because none of them are, very trustworthy narrators to the story, I think is really compelling and really good. So, yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for the thing. Let us know at home if you watch the thing every year. Let us know if you mix up a rusty nail, or let us know if you just have a bottle of J&B on hand. in case aliens come down and decide to take over your cute little sled dog. Let us know all that stuff. You can do that on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. You can go to our website, www.drinkthemovies.com. You can find pictures of our cocktails, episode recaps, recipes, links to Drink the Video Games, the merchandise shop, Patreon, all that stuff can be found on the website. Again, it's www.drinkthemovies.com. If you mix up a rusty nail or have a good thing cocktail, send that our way. We definitely appreciate it and talk about it on a lobby bar, something like that. And we definitely talk about it on Patreon, patreon.com/drinkthemovies. That's where we do our hangouts. That's where we do bonus content. That's where we have the Patreon only Discord server. All that stuff can be found there. Again, it's patreon.com/drinkthemovies. Michaela, there is a sequel to this for some reason. It's really a prequel, I think.
Yep.
Came out in 2011. I don't even want to talk about it. So, where can people follow along with the podcast?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week here at Drink the Movies. We do our lobby bar, which talks about all of the box office news and makes a cocktail that anyone, even you, can drink. And then we have our deep dives like the one you just listened to today. If you're liking what you're hearing, there's a subscribe button on your rectangle. I promise it's there. You can also leave us 5-star reviews on whatever platform you can hear us on. We would love that. It really helps us get all the Drink the Movies goodness out there. And for any video game fans, there is a new episode of Drink the Video Games that comes out, I believe, this week. By the time this is recorded, it probably, or sent out, it'll probably have been just yesterday that it was
Yep.
pushed out. The Force Unleashed. It is no surprise that I've not seen or played that video game, but it looks real cool and the cocktail's real cool. And so everybody should go take a look at that.
Yeah, you can check that out. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much out there for listening to this episode of Drink the Movies. Let us know what your October movie watching plans are. We've got a couple of more fun ones coming this month. Yeah, so stay tuned. We appreciate it. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the Movies.